Hello, everyone. Thank you for choosing our double roller crushers and double tooth roller crushers. The one behind me is a double tooth roller crusher. Now, I will teach you how to debug and use the equipment after it arrives on site. First, after the equipment arrives, install it properly and connect the power. The machine is powered by 2 motors, and we connect the power to the motor control box. This is our junction box. There are 2 motors, labeled as Motor 1 and Motor 2. Before powering up, we need to fill the 4 bearing chambers with grease. Refer to the markings on the machine. Running it without grease is strictly prohibited. This is our grease port. Before adding grease, clean the paint on the port using sandpaper. You can use an electric or manual grease gun to inject grease into the bearing. If the grease cannot be injected or it leaks from the main shaft gap on the side, it indicates the bearing is full. After the grease is full, power on the equipment and check the rotation direction of the 2 rollers. Start with 1 motor. Once the motor starts, ensure the rotation direction follows the labeled markings for proper debugging. The correct direction is for the 2 rollers to rotate towards each other. Pay close attention to this. During use, the tooth rollers will inevitably experience some wear. To adjust the gap between the rollers, use the 2 adjusting screw rods at the rear to modify the gap and discharge force. Our double rollers and tooth rollers consist of 2 rollers, 1 fixed and 1 movable. The movable roller can move back and forth to adjust the gap. To adjust the gap, we have adjusting screw rods at the rear. They are labeled with directions for loosening and tightening. First, loosen the screws. Both sides are the same. After loosening the screws, adjust the spring by turning the screw rod in the loosening direction. When the screw rod is loosened, the spring will release pressure on its own. After the pressure is released, there are additional adjusting screw rods in the middle on both sides, 1 on each side. Turn the adjusting screw rods clockwise to push the movable roller backward. When the movable roller is pushed back, the gap between the bearing chambers will open. Inside, there are adjustment shims. To control the gap between the rollers, add or remove adjustment shims. To make the gap larger, add adjustment shims. To make it smaller, remove the shims. Both sides must be adjusted evenly. After adjustment, tighten the screw rods on both sides. Then, rotate the 2 rear adjusting screw rods in the tightening direction to compress the 2 springs evenly. After tightening, secure the screws. This completes the gap adjustment process. During regular maintenance, the most critical part of the equipment is the roller disc bolts on the 2 rollers. For the first use, check the screws on the 2 roller discs every 4 hours to see if they are loose. For the second time, check them every 8 hours. For the third time, check them every 16 hours. After 3 inspections, check the roller disc bolts weekly. During production, if you hear abnormal noises while crushing materials, stop the machine immediately for a complete inspection. Check not only the gears, but also all bolts. To inspect, Remove the outer protective cover. Removing the cover is simple. On one side, there are 3 bolts. Remove these 3 bolts. The other side also has 3 bolts. After removing all 6 bolts, remove the protective cover. Then inspect the roller bolts. After the inspection, manually turn the belt pulley. Rotate the pulley 1 full circle. If the teeth on the 2-tooth rollers do not collide, the machine is ready for operation and material feeding. If the teeth collide, do not power on. Adjust the gap between the rollers to the appropriate size before operating.